we will just begin. So I'd just like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. And I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. So thank you everyone for jumping onto the How to Life with our guest Lychee Pan. So she'll be presenting on how to turn your passion into profit. So Lychee's actually a UCIT alumni, studied architecture, and then had a passion for photography. So she's successfully turned her passion into for photography and digital content into an Instagram following with over 450,000 followers and an impressive resume working with global brands and celebrities such as Hailey Baldwin and Vogue, just to name a few. So now I'll pass over to Lychee. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Let me see if I can stop video. Hi, everyone. Just checking in with everybody from South Africa. I'm going to just quickly share my screen. Okay. Okay. Okay, Caroline, is everyone able to see this?
I can see it just fine.
Okay, awesome. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. I put together this little presentation on how to turn your passion into profit. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in at any time and ask. Otherwise, chuck it into the comments box below, and I'm sure Caroline will bring out the questions. Okay, so a little bit of an introduction about me. As you can see, that little girl there in the class is myself. I attended school at a place called Rodin, which is in South Africa, in Johannesburg. I was still, since a very young age, the minority in my grade. I was the only Asian up until year 11. And I was fortunate enough to have been able to study at Sydney University. So as you can see there in the second picture, I actually graduated with my Masters of Architecture at Sydney University. And after that, I went on to work at a company called Max Media Lab. So I've been very fortunate since I was a little girl, where my parents always encouraged me to do what I loved. And in the sense that when I had friends growing up, I always saw their parents pressuring them into doing things that they weren't passionate about. I remember going into university and meeting people, and they'd tell me that they were studying medicine or doing different degrees such as law, that they weren't necessarily passionate about themselves, but their parents had really pushed them to do it. And I think it's really important from a young age to realize that you only have one life, and it's really, really important from a young age to establish what you are passionate about and look deep down, you know, what sort of sets your soul on fire and what excites you every day, and to follow that. And so, you know, since I was a little girl, I'll be honest, guys, I was never ever good at math. I wasn't good at science or biology. And I used to feel really down about that in school and get bullied a lot. People would laugh at me and say, oh, you're such a failed Asian. How can you be so bad at math? And, you know, I'm lucky in the sense that my mom never made me feel inferior otherwise. She'd always tell me, you know, just focus on what you are good at. And so from a young age, I did realize, you know, I love drawing, I love art, I love doing drama and acting. So that's the part that my parents started pushing me on. So once I finished high school in South Africa, I applied all over to universities in South Africa as well as Sydney, and abroad in Australia for architecture. I decided to do something that was art related. By that stage, I was still a bit unsure as to what I wanted to do in life. But I just knew that I wanted to do something in the art realm. So architecture was a good fit for me. Over the years, I have been incredibly lucky. I just wanted to share a couple of images that I've taken of clients. I was super lucky to work with Hailey Bieber as well as Nicole Warren, where my images were founded on Vogue, and Kayla. This is just a demonstration to show that if you are very passionate about, you know, whatever it is that you do, that it can take you to very, very far places. In the second screen, you can see that in this screen, what I did was I actually undertook a sabbatical in New York, where I furthered my studies in photography. And I actually hosted an exhibition, which a lot of you guys came to support. And I'm very grateful. I decided to showcase my work there, mostly documenting street photography from New York, and it was sponsored by Moet. So before I start this video, I just wanted to play it for you guys. It's a video that I made about doing what you can't, and you know, it's all about persistence, passion, and the will to succeed and to follow your heart. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Hi, So that video that you guys just watched, it just shows a reality of the same person, but in two different scenarios. And what I really enjoyed about making this video was the below video. It showcased me in a different realm, as someone working a job that they hate. And you can clearly see the difference, that in the above version, I'm able to wake up early, maintain a better lifestyle, and I'm just a much happier person overall. I go to work doing exactly it is what I love, as opposed to the person who's at the bottom, working a job that I completely dislike. So I hope this video really is able to also demonstrate that your life could be two different realities. And it's important, like I mentioned previously, to never stop aiming to be the best version of yourself, and to not let anyone put you down or to tell you that you can't do anything. Okay, moving on to the next slide, which is all about, can you turn what you love into a viable business enterprise? And I found this quote by Oprah Winfrey, which says, passion is energy. Feel the power that comes from focusing on what excites you. So I think the first and foremost thing that is really important when you're trying to find your passion before turning it into profit is what is it that excites you every single day? What motivates you to wake up in the morning and want to get out of bed? You know, is it traveling? Is it photography? Is it doing something creative? Or, you know, is it more video based? It could be anything. We all have extremely different passions, and some of you might say, I don't have a passion, but I think we all are put on this planet for a reason, and it's really important to look deep down and figure out what it is that excites you. For me, that was photography and art, and I discovered that from a really young age, that I really loved being a creative, and that was the path that I wanted to follow. And despite a lot of negative input that I received from family members growing up, as well as people in the community always putting me down, saying, you're not going to make money being a creative or working in the art field, I chose to look otherwise, and I chose to focus on something I was good at. And just a bit of a tip is, if you follow in life what it is you are passionate about, it's a lot more easier to turn it into a job, because when you're working overtime, you will never feel tired. Those long hours that you're working every single day, it doesn't feel like work. So yes, you definitely can turn what it is you love into a viable business enterprise, but it will require a bit of planning.
I have a quick question. Sorry to jump in. Did you try a bunch of other things first, or did you basically fall into photography and love photography?
I've always loved photography since I was little, and I started it, I think, when I was about 15 or 16. But as soon as I finished school and I finished university, I ended up getting a job at a media agency, which I applied for. So it was sort of my day job to help sustain, help me sustain and keep afloat in the meantime. But that job's also really helped me and into becoming a photographer, because an established one as well, because I got a lot of opportunities at the workplace. So I try to find a job that correlated with my passion, if that answers your question.
Thank you. Yep.
So in this slide, I just wanted to show you guys a couple of examples of a couple of my friends. Someone who I work very, very closely with is Koki Yamaguchi. He works as a freelance photographer, and he also graduated from the University of Sydney with a double major in visual arts and critical thinking. He's been lucky enough to collaborate with brands such as BMW as well as Sony. My other friend, Lauren Bullen, who you guys might know as Gypsy Lust on Instagram, she also left her job as a dental assistant to pursue a passion for travel and content creation. She's also collaborated with some incredible brands such as Emirates as well as Dubai Tourism. And then the last person, Jamie, she was working in PR, and she also decided to quit her job from Black Communications to launch her own hair care, which she's very passionate about, called Monday Hair Care, which you guys will, I'm sure you'll see it in Coles and different stores throughout Australia. So I just wanted to show you guys these slides as well, that it's not always been easy for a lot of people to leave something that always felt very familiar to them. And, you know, same as Lauren, she was telling me how much she disliked her dental job, but she chose to get slowly into photography, and she as well ended up doing it full time. So these are just a couple of people I hope that can also help inspire you guys. to follow and do something that you are extremely passionate about. The next slide that I wanted to share with you guys was a slide which is about focusing on your strengths. And there was a study done which shows that people who use their strengths at work are a lot happier. They're healthier, less stressed, they're more energetic, they're confident, they're very engaged. They end up being creative, agile, and they experience a lot more meaning at work. So these are just points that I wanted to bring up and to share with you guys, that if you find work that is meaningful to you, going to work every day will leave you feeling a lot happier, a lot healthier, a lot less stressed. And these are all things that I experienced when I was looking at work as a photographer and a creative. The next piece of advice that I really wanted to give you guys was the idea of keeping a stable job. I actually wanted to mention that as much as you are passionate about something, it may not always be profitable initially. And it's important that whilst turning your passion into profit, that you still have some sort of safety and security of your potential day job. It's important not to leave your full-time position until your passion project or whatever it is that you are doing that you're passionate about is actually able to provide you with a sustainable, growing cash flow that is about 75% to your current salary. And so I just wanted to dabble a bit on this topic, that it is also very, very important to have 6 to 12 months of savings. So for me, guys, I did keep my day job while I was juggling Instagram on the side. I wasn't making enough money from it yet to quit my day job. So I remember I remember always loving photography and being able to share it on this platform. And when I got my first business inquiry, someone offered to pay me, I think it was $150 for a photo. And I was so shocked. I was like, wow, someone actually wants to pay me a little bit of money, like for a photograph. And to me, that was a lot. And I couldn't believe that I was getting paid for something that I actually really was passionate about. So I slowly realized like, oh, maybe this could really be something. So I sort of kept going. During that time, I worked at this agency that you can see in the picture above. It's called Max Media Lab, and it's an agency based out in Alexandria. And it's an agency that focuses on PR as well as all things, as well as content creation. And for me, I gained an invaluable experience here because although it was not completely an art related job, I actually started out working here as a receptionist. And then I slowly worked my way up until I was promoted as a junior content editor. And then I became a senior content editor and then eventually became an art director here. So I just kept pushing and wanting to grow and learn. And I think it is important to keep your day job. And although it may not be something you always enjoy, waking up from 9 to 5, you should feel very comfortable. You should at least push on the side, because on the side I was doing photography and working on Instagram. And while I was building my client base, once I was confident that I was making enough money, it wasn't until then that I decided to quit and to walk away. Sorry about the little typo there, but success doesn't happen overnight. And I wanted to emphasize that the most important ingredient in anything, if you want to be successful, is passion. And I wanted to share a quote from Richard Branson, where he says, "When you believe in something, the force of your convictions will spark other people's interest and motivate them to help you to achieve your goals." and this is essential to success. And I think this quote is so powerful because it doesn't matter what you want to do, but success is also built on teamwork, and it's about other people believing in you and motivating you to achieve and do better. I was also very lucky during this time to have found 2 mentors who really helped to achieve my goals. And if I can give you guys a really good piece of advice, it's also about finding mentors that will help to guide you and will help to give you advice when you feel incredibly lost. And for me, I was very lucky. I had a mentor. Her name was Ingrid, and she was the head of Lancom's PR. And I went to her one day and I asked if she could mentor me, and she always gave me advice. And when I was confused or wasn't too sure about quitting my job, she gave me the extra nudge and said, this has been a long time coming, Lee, and you should have quit a very long time ago. And, I think as humans, it's always very daunting to leave something that feels familiar and comforting. And for me, that was the familiarity and comfort of a salary and knowing that I have this money coming in every month, and that sort of security. And even though I was making already more money through my Instagram than I was through my day job, I was still extremely scared because I kept thinking, what if one day my passion project can't pay me anymore? And I had to take that risk and that leap of faith. And once I had enough savings, and after speaking to my mentor and working consistently, I decided I think now is the time. If not now, then I'm never going to do it. So yeah, that wraps up my presentation. And I just wanted to leave some time as well for you guys to ask me any questions so far. So does anyone have anything as well that they're wanting to ask?
We have had a few questions in the chat. So the first one is, I'm super passionate about art design and illustrating, and I'd love to get more freelance work as an illustrator. Do you have any tips on how to get your work out there? How did you meet your clients and get your work in front of the right people?
So for me, how I managed to get my work in front of the right people was promoting it on my website, which is www.lichupan.com, as well as Instagram. I think Instagram is such a powerful tool for marketing, but it is also another really amazing way where you can showcase your work is building up an online website. A great website which you guys can get started on is Squarespace. So that's how I started. I started out on Blogspot. I think it was called Blogspot, but over the years, everything sort of improved, and there are a lot of templates that are already set up on Squarespace. If you pay, I think, a fee of $140, you can actually purchase a template, and you can also purchase a domain. And whenever I'm working with clients, even though you have an Instagram, they usually want a more professional, place where they can look at your work. So a really good place is to definitely still have your own website where you can redirect them. And I think what was the earlier question, is that how did I get my clientele?
Yes. So how would you go about getting more freelance work as an illustrator?
As a freelancer, the best way for me to give you advice is to definitely use Instagram for the time being. It's a really powerful tool to reach a very different and a very wide audience. If I can say, I would love for you to also pop your Instagram handle or email it to me later so I can have a better look at it and to give you some advice. It's really important to be consistent. So if you are wanting to grow as a freelance illustrator, that your page really reflects all your work and your strongest work, I would say to promote a lot of your work and not to be scared. It's really important as well to engage and to DM brands that you really want to work with. I remember Dubai tourism. I kept I was also very proactive in approaching them, and I said, hey, I've always wanted to visit Dubai. I'd love for you to check out my Instagram page and my website. I'm not sure if there's space for a collaboration, but would love to work with you in some sort of capacity. And to my surprise, they actually replied, and they were very excited to work with me. So a very good piece of advice I can give you is don't be afraid or shy to approach and be proactive, because nothing is going to just fall into your lap. It's really important to be proactive in whatever it is you do and to take initiative. So if there is something, a client in particular that you are dying to work with, most of the times they're actually really good with even replying directly to you on Instagram DMs. Otherwise, another way is looking at a client's website and finding their best contact page. There's usually a marketing and sales email on there. You can also feel free to email them directly and ask them if they're keen on working with you.
Everyone feel free and jump in if you have a question, but otherwise I'll keep reading them from the chat. The next one we had was, how do you find a mentor?
The best way to find a mentor is actually it could be anyone. It doesn't have to necessarily be someone that is out of reach. Mentors are people that you admire and whom you look up to for guidance. And, it could be your neighbor who's very successful what they do, or it could even be a teacher or a professor at university. It could even be someone you really respect, who you don't have an extremely close relationship to. I just wanted to point out that a mentor doesn't have to be someone that is extremely out of reach. It's important to find someone who you admire, and it's easy to just sort of approach them. I found my mentor at work. She actually came in as a director, and I really valued and admired her in many ways, from her personal life to balancing and juggling her career. I thought she was an incredible woman. And to me, a mentor is someone who you'd like to aspire to be. And she had a lot of values and that I really admired and wished to become. So I decided to approach her one day after work, and I just was having a chat with her, and I said, Ingrid, would you be open to mentoring me? And most of the times people are so flattered, because it's such a high form of, just such a big compliment to anyone to be asked to mentor them. And we catch up at least, once every 2 months or once every 3 months, just depending on how busy she is as well. We'll just catch up for a coffee or a quick dinner, and she'll ask me, how's everything going at work or with Instagram or photography. And if I have questions regarding payments or how much I should be charging clients, I'd always ask her for her feedback, and she'd give me really invaluable insights.
So the next question was along the line of charging, but for someone starting out as a freelance photographer, how do you start charging? How do you determine an appropriate rate?
So there is a bit of a base rate that you should be charging as a freelance photographer, depending on your experience. But I sort of had an unfortunate experience myself when I was younger. I always did jobs for free. I didn't realize that my work was valuable, and no one really guided me. My first year out of uni, when a brand would ask, oh, how much do you charge for this? And for me, it was such an honor to be working with that brand that I would just say, oh, I'll do it for free, because I was so petrified of losing the job altogether. I thought, let me just not charge and do some free work. And that way I'll definitely secure the client. But that's also not the correct way of going about it. It's important to realize that your time is valuable. And as a freelance, I would recommend as a base rate to at least be charging anywhere between $20 to $25 an hour. And it's usually how I work as a photographer is I have a rate card prepared. So a rate card, I have different options, and one of the options is a full day rate, and the second option is a half day rate, so that instead of getting paid on an hourly basis, where if you did 4 hours of photography, that would equate to $100. If you're charging $25 an hour, I would actually create a rate card and say, my half day rate is $300 to $400, and a full day rate of 8 hours of work is, let's say, $1,000. And in that day rate, you would break down what it includes, so the client is very clear of what they're paying for. Because as a paying client, everyone wants to know what it is exactly that they're paying for, and are they getting value out of money, their value for money out of this $1,000 day rate. So under the day rate, I would also say it includes 4 hours of post-production and retouching. It includes lighting and equipment. It includes my transport costs. So it's also really important to look at what costs are involved on your side, such as post-production. People don't always see how much time goes into editing a photo. So if you need 4 hours or 3 hours, it's important to list that in your rate card, and to let clients know exactly where it is that your money is, where their money is going. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks for that. We've got another question. What type of photography do you specialize in? Travel, editorial, and should we find a niche or start off being broad?
I definitely think it's important to start out broad, because in the beginning, you're still sort of experimenting and trying to find your style and find out what it is that you are good at. It's never, I always think instead of finding a niche, it's better to be all-rounded in, different departments. And I'm just speaking from my personal experience, because I started out doing, let me think. When I started out on Instagram, I was mostly doing food photography. And then that slowly led to having to dabble in editorial photography because of my workplace. And I really enjoyed doing editorial. However, I have to be honest, it was very, very daunting meeting a lot of really big figures such as Hailey Bieber and Kayla. I sometimes found myself unable to, breathe. I was like, okay, just relax, because there's a lot of pressure. And when you are doing editorial, if you are the lead photographer, there's a lot of pressure riding on you, where there's a lot of high expectations, and people will look at your previous work and say, I want that look. And sometimes it is very hard to replicate a certain look, because, that person, that team that you're working with might have had to create a different creative vision as opposed to the team you're currently working with. But I think I found my passion in travel photography, because I loved seeing and experiencing new cultures. For me, shooting editorial there was a lot of pressure, despite it being very exciting to be able to meet these people. What I found was very interesting was editorial actually doesn't pay well. Not too sure if people are aware of that, but because most of the times you're working with such public profile figures, brands or clients will often say, you know, this is not paid at all, or we're going to pay you a very small amount because this is all a brand can afford. And I've come to also understand my worth and realizing that although sometimes it is an amazing opportunity and you do get to meet some incredible people, it's also important to realize that you have bills to pay. You need to eat and you need to cover your essentials, and taking free photos all the time, that's not going to help sustain your life. So it is important to discover your niche, but also find out, you know, can what you specialize in pay your bills. And yeah, for me, I was blessed as well because a lot of travel clients actually pay very generously. So as much as I enjoy editorial, travel is a good balance of being able to pay me a good amount of money for me to sustain my everyday life. So I hope that also answers your question.
I had a question.
Yes.
Yeah, hi. I am an architect and a photographer as well. So I'm studying Master of Architectural Science at the university, but after that, I am planning to explore the Australian market, for product photography or probably wedding one. So I wanted to ask if you worked in Australian market, is it easy to get into? What are the charges like? Or that is one part. And second is, in post-production, do you edit your photos a lot? And what softwares do you use? Is that a lot of questions?
I'm going to try my best to remember all the questions. I use Lightroom as well as Photoshop to edit my images. You can also, I'll share my email with you guys later as well. So if you have any other questions, you can just pop them through. But I use Lightroom and Photoshop. I was lucky because same as you, when I was studying my master's at Sydney Uni, the unis taught us a lot of different programs. So I was lucky enough to learn Lightroom, Photoshop, Illustrator, and these are all programs that I dabbled with a lot, and it really helped me with my, you know, getting a head start in post-production. But there are a lot of resources online that also are able to help guide you with how to edit. And I'd love to be able to teach you a bit more about presets or editing if you would like.
Yeah,
And
sure.
yeah, you can send me an email, and if you have existing presets, you're even welcome to send them to me. I can always check them out for you. And then what was the first part of your question?
It was, have you explored any Australian market? I mean, how's the photography market? I'm sure the competition is fierce, and is it easy to get clients? Or just a general question about Australian photography industry.
So to answer your question, I think first and foremost, it is the Australian market. It is, I found, to be quite lucrative. It is really important before looking at anything that's lucrative. First and foremost is it's important to have a good relationship with people, if I can put it that way. It's really, really important to maintain good relationships, because I came to realize that a lot of my clients kept coming back to me because they really liked how I dealt with their clients or how I dealt with their product. And, you know, when people hire other people as well, it's a lot about people skills and understanding that you do need to respect, and it's little things like delivering images on time, delivering client assets on time when you're done photographing I always had a policy with myself that I said that if I took photos for a client, I would actually edit on the same day and deliver in the next 2 to 3 days after having some time to touch up. And I think that really set me apart from other photographers. People's turnaround times were always, they'd always tell
Weeks.
clients, yes, I need a month. I need a month to edit, or 3 weeks. But clients liked me because I tried to produce good quality content, and I would have a really quick turnaround time. And instead of taking my time to edit and download, I would always push myself right after a shoot to download all my images, to back it up on a hard drive, and I would edit on the same day. And I would just try to churn out as much. I would just try to churn out as much as I could for that client. And I would always do added value things for my clients, such as, let's say we agree on 40 images in the day rate, I would actually deliver 80, or I'd deliver 70 or 60 images.
Wow.
Instead of hanging on to images, what are you going to do with those? I used to always ask myself that. I'd say, I can't give you 40 good images, but what am I going to do with the rest? Why not just give a bit more to the client and leave them happy? So it's important to I always say, don't overpromise and under-deliver. It's better to not promise the world, and then, when you're delivering the assets or the images to your client, you over deliver in that aspect. And clients always end up being extremely grateful for any added value work. So, I hope that answers your question as well. It's in the Australian market, and I don't just speak for Australia, even internationally speaking, and having worked with different clients, I believe in being selective as well with who you work with, because those clients are a representation of who you stand for and what you value. And it's also a reflection of who you are as a creative. So if you select clients that align with you, other clients who see that will say, oh, okay, like this style of photography, it's exactly in line with what we're looking for. And then they'll end up coming back to you. So yeah, it's very important to maintain good relationships and to always try to have a quick sort of turnaround time. And, nobody likes waiting like a month for images. If people have to wait a month for anything, by the time they're done, it already feels irrelevant, if that makes sense.
That makes sense, yeah. Because here, even when I do shoots, I take at least a week or two. But I like the idea of pushing yourself and delivering within 2-3 days amount of time. So I'm done with my questions, but this is just out of curiosity. What do you prefer, Nikon or Canon? The evergreen battle.
I always have this argument with my friend Koki, because he's always saying to me, when are you moving over to Sony? And for me, I personally love Canon. I've worked with Sony as well, and they produce really crisp images. For me, Canon has a bit of a softer focus on things, which I like. So in the image that you can see on the screen as well, that image was taken using a Canon, and it just has a very romantic and sort of soft feel to the images, which I really like. Sony is incredible for any sort of night photography, and I know Nikon's also really great for like nature, like landscape images. I have a lot of friends who are landscape photographers, and they spend a lot of time photographing landscape sort of images. And like for me personally, I love Canon, but it's all up to the, like, everyone's preference. If before investing in any piece of expensive gear, I would always recommend that if you have a friend that has a camera that you really like, you can always ask to just borrow it or shoot a couple of images, and even just going to any camera shop and asking if you're able to try out all the different lenses, because everyone has different preferences. So you have to pick something that you really love, and that a camera gear that really resonates well with you.
Thank you.
No worries.
So we've got another question in the chat. Have you ever struggled with comparison throughout your career? If so, how do you overcome it personally?
Oh, that's such a good question. And yes, I feel like comparison is one of the biggest things that anyone will have to go through in their life. And I experienced it not only in my work culture, but also as a photographer. People would always compare me to someone else and say, and I would have people deliberately say, oh, but you know, so and so's images are a lot nicer, or you know, don't you think this you could have done better like so and so. And how I sort of overcame that and tackled that as a creative was I had to really, I remember going to my mum and sort of beating myself up and saying, oh, I wish I could have done it better. And the client, or you know, just the person's remark was, you know, comparing me to someone else. And my mum would always remind me and say that we're all individuals and we're all unique, and it's important to value yourself and respect yourself as a creative, that nobody will ever have your style. And you know, instead of copying someone else, my mum would always say it's important to develop your own style and be a sort of leader in the game and what you do. I remember over time, as I started finding out my own style and how I like to edit, people actually started copying a lot of things that I did, or would replicate it. And it would sometimes, I would sometimes feel upset. And my mom, when I was chatting to my mom, she'd always say, you know, it's when someone is copying you, it's still like a big sort of compliment to your style. It means that you're doing something right. And she would just say, you know, just keep doing you. And I think over the years, as I've done photography, my style has kept evolving, and it's due to a lot of the things that I've seen, or traveling and different cultures, experiencing that sort of stuff, that's really helped to shape and change up my style in photography. So yeah, to answer your question, don't beat yourself up. It's important to also, you know, you should give yourself enough credit. People will always compare you to someone else, but it's important to realize that, you know, there's only one of you, and, you know, to just embrace that and really learn the importance of self-love and being kind to yourself mentally. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
So the next question, how did you develop your skill in photography? Was it something you studied professionally, or something that was more self-taught?
I was self-taught in the beginning. I started photography when I was around 15, and I actually undertook the subject in my high school. Actually offered photography as a subject, and I took it from grade 10, so year 10 to year 12. And one of my majors in art was photography, so I ended up presenting my final art piece as images. And then I always wanted to pursue it further, and it wasn't until when I finished my uni degree, I also managed to, I'm not too sure if you guys are aware of this, but Sydney Uni, they offer an elective in photography for a lot of creative subjects. So I took photography as an elective for a semester, and it was so helpful. They actually taught me analog photography. So it was the first time where I dabbled with a manual camera. And they also allowed me to work in the dark room and to develop photos, and how to mix different chemicals to develop images, which I found really interesting. And after that, I've always wanted to keep on pushing and wanting to learn more. So I actually undertook a course at New York Film Academy in New York in 2019. And it was a course for 3 months. And if any of you guys have, would like to invest in a course, I'd highly recommend it as well. They also have a branch in Australia, which is awesome. So if you look up New York Film Academy Australia, they also have, you don't have to go to New York. There are also courses in Australia that they offer that are very hands-on. You deal with professors that are very, very experienced and have a lot of industry knowledge, and they actually teach you how to use analog cameras, and as well as digital cameras. So you get to learn how to use both. Yeah, I would really recommend investing in a couple of courses if you are very passionate about photography. Just it's important. For me, I self-taught, but then there was a lot of things that I didn't have answers for. And actually attending a short course, they also covered how to edit on Photoshop and how to edit on Lightroom. So for anyone who has no knowledge at all, that course will teach you how to edit, how to do editorial, how to touch up, how to do lighting. And I ended up incorporating a lot of what I'd learned at the school. So I was already self-taught, but the school just further helped me to learn even more things that I had no idea of. And I think what I think is a good piece of advice is, even though I was self-taught and I was working on clients, I actually decided to enroll into school because I felt like there were a lot of questions I had unanswered about certain things on editing or editing via Lightroom, or how technical problems or that I had experienced as a photographer. And going to school, the professors helped me to answer all the questions that I had, and it helped me to become an even better photographer. So I always think education is a huge investment, and it's always worth doing short courses, even if it's 3 to 4 months. Getting somebody to help you to answer questions that you might have it's very, very beneficial later on.
So we've got 2 last questions in the chat, and I think that's all we have time for. But I have posted Leechy's best email address. So if there were questions that you had, or like she mentioned, your Insta handle or whatever, feel free to email them through to her. So the next question we have is, what has been the most challenging aspect of your career so far? And have you felt concerned that monetizing your creative process could take away your enjoyment of it?
The most challenging thing I've experienced so far, that's a tough one because there have been a lot of challenges along the way. I think one of the biggest challenges I had was actually on an editorial shoot. I had been asked to do a shoot, and even though I was really nervous, I still took it on, and I tried to push myself because I think as a photographer, it's important to always push yourself to do things that make you feel uncomfortable, so that you can grow and learn. And I think this time, bit off too much for me, because during the shoot, the client had very, very, very high expectations, and I felt like I had come short of their expectations. So the client, during the photo shoot, it was tough because I didn't have enough knowledge on lighting. So not too sure if you guys are aware, but there's a lot of lighting involved with editorial photography. So most people use pro photo lighting, and yeah, I ended up having to do a shoot where I wasn't extremely great with the lighting equipment. So my company had sent me to do a skin shoot, and obviously doing a skin shoot, you have to be very well prepared with the lighting, and I had no formal training on how to use any of this lighting equipment. And I had two clients that were on set the entire shoot, and they were so critical of the images, and they kept saying, but this lighting, can we alter it? Can we change it? And can you imagine going into a photo shoot where you're sent to by the company and accepting this job that your company asks you to do? Like, you have no idea, you have a basic understanding of photography, but no formal idea of lighting. And, lighting is such a huge part of it that I remember after that shoot, I sort of just sobbed and I cried. I felt terrible about myself as a photographer, and I thought, I don't think I'm equipped for this. And I think that was sort of like a very pivotal point in my career, because it made me realize that, yes, as much as I am self-taught, as much as I've tried to learn off the internet, there are certain aspects that you do actually still need really formal training on. And for me, going back, that's actually was such a pivotal moment, me being like, you know what, I actually do need to go to school. I should invest in this. So I took a portion of my savings, and I was like, you know what, I've always wanted to further my training. So I did bring it up with the company, and they were like, we'll reimburse you later. But I just said, you know what, instead of trying to get permission, let me just go ahead, pay for this fee, because this is knowledge that is going to stay with me for a very, very long time. And that's when I went for formal training on how to use pro photo lighting and how to edit blemishes, how to Photoshop correctly so it doesn't look over photoshopped. And I just learned so much during my time there, and I'm so thankful I did it, because as soon as I came back, the jobs that I did take on, I felt so confident as a photographer. When I was shooting Kayla, when I was shooting, different clients moving forward, I felt very confident as a photographer. So when the clients would ask me, oh, are we able to do this or that? I was like, yes, I can, because I know how to now instead of guessing around. And do you mind repeating the first part of the question? The second, I think it was the second part, yeah.
Sorry, have you ever felt concerned that monetizing your creative process could take away your enjoyment of it?
Yes, that's actually a really good question as well, because it's I was actually previously managed by an agency, and the problem with that was that the agency wanted to make, for them, it was profiting as much as they could off a talent at the time. And I really struggled with that, because I am a person that really struggles to say no to things. And I always feel bad as a person, as if I'm letting someone down if I say no. And that's actually a skill that I've really had to learn over the years, is setting boundaries and knowing when to step back, when to say no, this is too much. Or I actually got to a point in my career where I was at my breaking point, where I was overworking myself to a point where I was back to back on jobs. I was never home. I was constantly flying, and I ended up getting quite depressed because of how much I was overburdening myself with just taking on way too much work. And I remember it was very overwhelming, because when I tried to say no to a job, my management would try and push and say, oh, but this is a really, really great client, and I really think you should keep going. And something that I was extremely passionate about started turning into, like you said, it was getting to a dangerous point in my life where I started thinking, oh, but I'm not happy anymore. And I think that's very dangerous, because when you are initially very passionate about something and it eventually becomes profitable, but then you start overburdening yourself with too much and you start taking on too much, that's when it can get to a dangerous point where you actually start thinking, oh, I don't want to do this work anymore at all, and I don't want to monetize this. So it's actually very important, if I can give you guys advice, to be able to set boundaries, to be able to say no, and to know what it is that you can and can't take on, so that you're able to still balance your life and do things at a very good balance. So yeah, I hope that is able to answer your question.
And we've got the very last question. Do you ever work with film? If so, do you have any advice for this?
Sorry, you broke up there, Caroline.
Oh, so sorry. Am I clearer now?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, awesome. So it was, do you ever work with film? If so, do you have any advice for this?
Yes, I have dabbled in film. I would say it's not as much of my forte. I love directing films, and I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of creatives. So and clients. I've been approached in the past by clients. I worked with a client called Cathay Pacific. And they asked me to do a film about a new fragrance that they were releasing in conjunction with their airline. It was called Parfums de Voyage, and they asked me to fly to Hong Kong to do a film that was a really accurate representation of that fragrance and embodying all those smells. So I actually, before any film that I do create, even the little short film that you saw in the beginning that I directed for Samsung, I always do a storyboard. I think same with photography, it's really important to have a mood board that helps you to visualize what it is that you're doing. So before any creative project, I always like to have I like to have creative direction into what it is that I will be photographing or, filming that day. And if it is something that you're not necessarily good at, like for me, I love directing, but I may not be as good of a film maker myself. So I always team up and collaborate with other creatives when it comes to post-production. So for me, for my Cathay Pacific video, I worked with a creative called GKHZ, and his name's Gabe Hutchinson. So I did up the mood board. I hired someone that was able to help me with the filming. And then once the filming was done, I ended up giving it to Gabe to edit and to stitch it together. And I think the whole process of, film is very intricate, because it's a very complex process, if I may say that, because there's so many different elements involved, from sound and music through to sound and sound through to like the animation, through to the stitching and editing of it. There's so many different elements to be considerate of. So yeah, I think film is an incredible it's an incredible industry and a whole new section on its own. But the film is definitely something that I'm also very passionate about. And I think it's also very great because you get to collaborate with a lot of different creatives.
Thank you so much for that. That's all the time we do have today. Thank you so much for joining us, Lychee. It was amazing to hear from you. Everyone who did register for this session, keep an eye out for our future How to Life sessions, and I'll send a link to the YouTube video for this presentation as well. Thanks, everyone.